I want to introduce our speaker today. So glad to have him, Anthony Jones. What a fun guy. We got to chat a good bit yesterday, and I got to preview his presentation a little bit. I think that it's going to be really interesting for everybody and give you some good tips for maybe growing your own following on LinkedIn and really making the most of that platform. Anthony is the Director of Digital Media and Marketing at Ducks Unlimited, the world's leader in wetland and waterfowl conservation. He's responsible for everything digital, so the website, social media, email marketing, online fundraising, and the mobile applications, and has actively engaged in LinkedIn over the past few years to grow a following of over 25,000 people. Which he'll be talking about at length in this session.
Okay, and there's my.
All right, I think I've got to steal the host back from you.
Can you do it?
I can do it. I can steal it back from you and then make Anthony the host. And we should be good to go. Yep, there we go. So Anthony, you should be the host now and you can share your screen.
All right, give me 1 second here. All right, how's that? Presentation up? Good to go?
Looks great. Great.
Well, thank you, Aaron and Patrick, for that introduction, and thanks for inviting me to be here today. I'm just going to jump right in, and I'm going to tell you all that I have one goal to accomplish within the next hour, and that is to motivate and convince all of you to be more active on LinkedIn. I want you to leave here today and start posting content with confidence, and not just today, but posting on a regular basis, because doing so, done the right way, can establish your online brand. And at the end of this webinar, I plan to issue a challenge to everyone. So between now and that time, I'm going to share some of my personal experiences, some lessons that I've learned, and give you some actionable tips that you can take on how to get started, as well as some tools and resources to help build your brand on LinkedIn. So just a couple of other logistical items up front, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. This is being recorded and it will be made available to members of the AMA Memphis chapter.
Yes, correct.
On their website.
Yeah, so it'll be on the website. So yet another incentive to join AMA, a discount right now, and you have access to great content.
And I will say, for those of you who will not have access to that, if you stick around to the end of the presentation, I will share a link where you will find nearly every tip that I'm sharing in this today. Okay, so let's start off talking about how most people have traditionally used LinkedIn. And it's probably how many of you are using it today. Using it to search for a job, maybe recruiting, using it to generate leads for sales, using it to promote your company, or maybe you're using it to deliver cold sales pitches. And if you're doing that, please stop. There is a better way, and I'll share some thoughts on that today. But so many people don't look at LinkedIn as a platform to build their personal brand. And for the sake of transparency, I just want to say, I am not a certified LinkedIn expert. I've never taken a class or a certification on the subject. Like was mentioned earlier, my day job is the Director of Digital Media at Ducks Unlimited. And while social media, including LinkedIn, is a huge part of our overall marketing program, today I'm sharing this personal story as it relates to building my personal brand. Let me also share this. It does not matter what your end goal is with LinkedIn. It doesn't matter if you're here to drive sales, if you're here to recruit for your company, or just serve as a subject matter expert in your field. By building an online brand, you will help establish the credibility, and credibility is the key word here, that you need to stand out from the competition. So my journey on LinkedIn began back in April of 2007. when I created a profile. Now, why did I do that? Because that's just what professionals were supposed to do, right? Like most people, I created a page, I added a profile pic and a short bio. And in the months that followed, I connected with a few dozen people that I personally knew, and that was pretty much it. I never came back to engage with content or post or engage content in the newsfeed. And that's how I used LinkedIn until about 4 years ago. So one day, not long after Microsoft purchased LinkedIn, I came across an article that talked about how fast the network was growing and how effective it could be in developing your personal brand. And I never really thought of using LinkedIn for that purpose. So that piqued my interest a little bit, and I started coming back maybe once or twice a week, but this time I was paying attention to the content. And every time that I logged on, I had the exact same reaction. Oh my, this newsfeed is the most boring crap I've ever seen, right? Job postings that had no relevance to me, press releases, and terrible sales pitches in my inbox. And there's no fun in that. So I figured one way to change that was to expand my network. You know, new faces, new perspectives, new content. And over time, the content in my feed started to get a little bit better. I started to notice a handful of people who actually posted great content. And I noticed many of them used humor and they show their personal side in their content. And these are 4 great examples of folks that you could follow. And I'm going to talk more about a few of them a little bit later. But that's when I started to understand what building a personal brand was all about. I realized there is a huge difference between having a page and having a brand or an identity on LinkedIn. If you have a profile page, but you never post content and you never engage with the newsfeed, that is all you have, just a page. Essentially, you're invisible to the LinkedIn world. But if you're actively posting content, if you're interacting with your network and you're trying to add value to your followers, then you're building a brand. Now, this is our youngest son, Parker. Parker is 8 years old and absolutely loves to play baseball. He hopes to play professional one day. And to be totally honest, we would love that. But as you would expect, we have told him time and time again that the only way you can be a great baseball player is to put in the practice. You can't just watch baseball on TV and become a star. I realize that sounds like really basic advice that any parent would give their kid, right? But the same thing is true in social media, including posting on LinkedIn. You can't just drop by and look at the newsfeed or read an article or even attend webinars, which I'm glad you're here. Don't hang up. But my point is you have to practice. So for the last 4 years, I have been practicing. And during that time, I've learned a lot in the 800 posts that I've made. And through that process, somehow managed to build a network of 25,000 followers. So the question is, how did I go from being completely invisible to just having a page to having some level of visibility on this channel? And I'll come back to that in a minute. But first, I want to share what is likely the biggest mistake that people make on LinkedIn. So many people focus only on building their profile page. And don't get me wrong, yes, it's important to optimize your page. You need to have a professional photo, headline, a well-written summary about your work experience. But 90% of the people on LinkedIn do this and they walk away. Those people have a page, not a brand. I'll share a pretty shocking statistic with you, at least it was shocking for me. There are more than 660 million total users on LinkedIn, but only 3 million people share content on a regular basis. That means that 3 million people are getting 9 billion impressions. That's 9 billion with a B every week. Basically, less than 1% of LinkedIn users post regularly. This chart should make your eyes light up. So my question to the group today and to each of you is, are you posting content on a regular basis? If so, congratulations, you're in that 1%. You have a head start on everyone else, and I would say keep going. But if you aren't, I hope that you can at least see the opportunity that's in front of you. Now, we have a lot of marketing professionals on the call today. And we all know that one of the golden rules of successful marketing is to stand out from the rest of the crowd. And that can be really, really hard to do in today's world. But guess what? It is not hard to stand out on LinkedIn. I mean, it's really not. And for two reasons, right? We just learned that number one, LinkedIn can be a pretty dull and boring place. And number two, on the whole, there's not that much competition. I mentioned a moment ago that there were a handful of people who very early on that stood out in my newsfeed, who I found to be very interesting. And they all had this common thread. And it goes against the traditional notion that so many people have about LinkedIn, but they were posting content about themselves. People connect with people. Now that's a universal thing, I know, but it applies online too. Even on LinkedIn, people connect with people. You see, people don't connect with motivational quotes or press releases or links to websites that so many people just blindly reshare on LinkedIn. People connect with people. But knowing that, still, for many people, there are barriers. And I think this is one of the biggest roadblocks when it comes to posting content on LinkedIn. And it's this, people don't know what to post. They don't know what is truly appropriate content for LinkedIn, which happens to be one of my favorite personal topics. But if I could offer one piece of advice here, it's this. Post content that will allow your network to learn about you. It is just that simple. And I realize that goes against the traditional notion that LinkedIn is just for business and all content must be career related. But remember, people connect with people. So go out there and be you. Be authentic, relatable, and start posting content. Now, from a personal standpoint, I love humor and sarcasm. And as it turns out, there's not a lot of that on LinkedIn. So I have tried being the key word, tried to use humor as a general theme for most of my content. I feel like humor is relatable and it's universal. Now, I don't consider myself to be a funny person, but guess what? It is not hard to be funny on LinkedIn. I mean, seriously, you can post a knock-knock joke on LinkedIn and really stand out in the newsfeed. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone go out and try to be funny. It's just the approach that I've taken. So if you don't currently follow me, just be forewarned that my content is basically anything. And I won't read this list aloud because admittedly, it starts to sound pretty weird when I do. But I have tried to challenge the notion of what is appropriate for LinkedIn. And in fact, I created a hashtag a few years ago that I brand all of my posts with. So go follow the hashtag LIappropriate and you'll kind of see what I mean there. You have no doubt heard debates that LinkedIn is not Facebook, and that's true. And that LinkedIn is a professional space, and that's also true. But that doesn't mean you can't show your personality or, God forbid, have a little bit of fun. So let me address this concern that so many people have in terms of what is truly appropriate. So we should all know, I know that with every post that I make on LinkedIn, there is either a direct or an indirect association with my company. Because yes, this is a business networking site. So I certainly have boundaries that I won't cross. I'm not polarizing, I'm not inflammatory. I stay away from politics and divisive issues. And most importantly, I don't post content that would be contrary to the values of Ducks Unlimited. But at the same time, I also apply the common sense that the good Lord gave me, and I've used that to develop this highly scientific filter that I'm going to share with you. So before I post something on LinkedIn, I ask myself these three questions. Number one, will this embarrass my mom? Number two, will this post get me fired? And number three, will I need a lawyer after I post this? And if the answer is no to all three of those, then it is LinkedIn appropriate in my book. So let's talk about content and how you can get started in generating ideas. And in case I put you to sleep, please wake up for just a moment and pay attention because the next two slides are the most important in this deck. If you remember nothing else today, remember that the most effective way to build your brand on LinkedIn is to post engaging and personal content. And to do this, you need to keep these 3 pillars in mind as part of your content strategy. Number 1, be authentic, be yourself. Number 2, be relatable. And number 3 is the most important, be consistent. Consistency is everything on LinkedIn, and here's why. And it's actually something that I've addressed in several posts before. I have seen so many people who eagerly start out posting content on LinkedIn. They come in with excitement, they may make a handful of posts, but the posts get very little engagement and they just give up. Like, what's the point? Consistency can be the hardest part of this entire equation. My advice is to keep at it. My first 50 plus posts were all over the place. I was lucky to get 3 or 4 likes, maybe a comment. So some of you may relate to that because it is normal starting out. But I kept going. I kept posting. More importantly, I kept learning. And as you learn what resonates with your followers, that's when you can start to adapt your tone and your style. And over time, you've established the very essence of what this presentation is all about, and that's building an online brand. But you have to put in the work. But it's easier than you think because content opportunities are all around you. And I'll tell you, sometimes I will be driving to work, I may be in a store or in the shower, and I'll have an idea for a post. And when I do, I just pull out my phone, I jot down a few words in the Notes app. Sometimes it may be a week or 2 later that I'll have another idea to kind of flush that out into an actual post. But as you do this, developing content gets easier and easier as you go. Because it's hard to explain, but you kind of develop this little voice or something in the back of your head, hopefully not an actual voice, but there's always something in your mind saying, be on the lookout for content ideas. And when you do that, they start showing up all over the place. So here's how to get started if you haven't already. Set a goal every week to make 2 to 3 LinkedIn posts that introduce yourself to the world. Once you get started, people will know who you are and they will start to engage. Now, the list of content ideas is pretty endless, but I'm going to give you a starting point with a couple of ideas. First of all, look at the content from your Facebook or Instagram page. It's very likely that you can repurpose a lot of that for LinkedIn. Maybe not a picture of you doing that cake stand in college, but you get the idea. Talk about something that you've learned in your career. Maybe a project that you're working on. Brag about your family, or share the latest binge that you're watching on Netflix. Why? Because people relate to all of these things. And since you are all wondering, the latest Netflix binge at our house has been 2. Has been Yellowstone and most recently Cobra Kai. And if you are a Karate Kid fan growing up in the 80s like me, you've got to watch this. It's a no-brainer. And if you still aren't comfortable posting anything that I just mentioned, start with this one. Post a photo of your dog or your pet and ask people to share pictures of their pets in the comments. And I'll tell you, you have to brace yourself. I've done this 5 or 6 times for fun in the last few years, and I get similar results every single time. A few weeks ago, I did it, and a day later, the result was more than 200 photos of good dogs in one post. Again, it was relatable. And that one post generated dozens of new connections. Try this and watch it work. So just a couple of other random posting tips. In terms of frequency, like I mentioned, I suggest starting out 2 to 3 posts a week and build up from there. Don't make it overwhelming on yourself to feel like you have to post every day because you'll get overwhelmed and you'll give up. Whenever possible, respond to people who comment on your posts and tag them in it. So here's an example. Rick commented that he had registered for this webinar. So I liked the comment, I responded, and importantly, I tagged him in the response. So the reason that tagging is important is by tagging Rick, this comment will show up in the news feed of his connections. people who aren't connected to me, but by doing this, it exposes my post and my content to potentially hundreds of new people. And if you do that on everyone who comments on your post, your network will start growing overnight. Also, pay attention to the engagement velocity of your post. So basically, if a post is performing really well and you're getting a lot of interaction and so forth, let it ride out, let it sit for a couple of days. On the flip side of that, if your post is bombing, just move on to your next post. Don't worry about it. Try to keep the number of edits to a minimum. So we all make posts. We all realize that sometimes we made a typo or something was just not quite right. No problem going in there making a couple of edits. But I have noticed that if you make 5 or 6 edits on a post, the LinkedIn algorithm starts to kind of throw shade on that. So try to keep those edits to a minimum. If you post something that's related to a person or a company, tag them in the post. But don't be one of those people that tags 80 people in every single post. That's really annoying. And on the days that you don't post, just make a note to go in for 10 or 15 minutes and engage with the news feed. That's as important as posting. Okay, so hashtags. Talk about that for a minute, which is one of my favorite topics on LinkedIn. So several years ago, LinkedIn introduced hashtags, and as you all probably know, they work in a very similar way as Twitter or Instagram, basically to categorize your content. And if you add hashtags to your content, it helps that content get discovered by other users, including those who aren't connected to you. So as a general rule, I encourage you to use 3 or 4 hashtags in every post, and use hashtags that are related to the content. But honestly, this is a case of do as I say and not do as I do, because honestly, I use hashtags the way hashtags were never meant to be used. Most of the time, when I write a post, I'll then add hashtags to either kind of continue the story or just add some bit of humor. It's just something that I started one day. People started to engage with it, and it's kind of a theme that I carry throughout most of my posts. And for good or bad, that's part of the brand that I've built on LinkedIn. So what I would encourage you to do in that situation or in that regard is create your own branded hashtag and include that in your profile and in every post that you make. This can also be a great way to promote your team. So about a year ago, I created a hashtag specifically for my team, the Ducks Unlimited digital team. And if you look at some of my teammates, look at their profiles, you'll notice that they've added that headline and they use it in the posts that they make that are related to our team or the projects that we're working on. So just a few examples here. Jennifer Yates, who is our email marketing guru, just made a post that mentioned our total email volume last year, along with an email marketing tip. And as you'll see in these examples, it included our team's hashtag. Pepper posted 10 things that she learned after her first 6 months on the job, and it was a huge hit, 18,000 views. Robbie posted a 12-second video of a dog running down the hall, and that clip had over 3,000 views. And personally, I like to post like behind the scenes content, like this picture you see here of our team as we were gearing up for a social media contest earlier this year. We're not talking about sharing proprietary information or sensitive content, just things that we're working on or fun things that we see and experience around the office. And in doing this, the team is basically serving as brand ambassadors for Ducks Unlimited, right? And that's pretty powerful marketing when it's done correctly. You know, my personal hope is that people would see our content and they want to work for Ducks Unlimited. They would want to work for my team based on the content they've seen on LinkedIn. Okay, I'm going to use one of the corporate buzzwords that I hate the most right now and pivot to another topic real quick. And that's about tips to grow your network. So if you recall earlier, when I created my profile back in 2007, I never dreamed of connecting with people on LinkedIn that I did not personally know. But over time, I realized that the power of LinkedIn is actually growing that network. And let me reiterate, the best way to grow your network, if you do nothing else, is just post good content. But there are a few other tips I'll share. So who else should you connect with besides friends, family, and colleagues? Here's a few ideas. First of all, send connection requests to people who engaged with your post. I'm talking about second and third degree connections that you're not connected with now, but they found your content. They clearly showed interest in it, so it's likely that they'll engage with your content in the future. Connect with people who have similar job roles. So one of my suggestions is do a search on LinkedIn for people who have your job title and send invitations to the people in that results list. You already have something in common. Or if you're looking to make a career change jobs, search for the title of the job that you want and send those people connection requests. You never know what you may learn from them. Connect with others in your industry. So I routinely send out invitations to people who work in the nonprofit sector, who are digital marketers, people in the outdoor industry. You can start with a list of your corporate partners and start connecting with their staff. If you're like me, you've got a stack of business cards, either in a bag or in a desk drawer somewhere. Go through those, send those people connection requests. And of course, if you see at a conference or somewhere a speaker that impresses you, by all means, reach out and send them a connection request as well. And finally, moving on to my last topic, and that is LinkedIn video. So back in 2017, LinkedIn launched native video. And during the last 3 years or so, this media has exploded on the platform. I have no doubt you have seen examples of video in your newsfeed, some that are really good and some that really want to make you cringe. But one thing I've learned is that video can be the absolute best way to establish your brand. It's the toughest, but it's the most effective. And the reason is pretty simple. It's literally you talking to your network. It lets people connect to you in a different way. It lets your personality shine. And it's much more effective than posts that are text only or photos. And videos done right can be a game changer as you build your brand. And it doesn't require any financial investment. You don't need a fancy camera. You don't need a production studio. Every video I've ever filmed has been on my phone. You need a smartphone and something to hold it. It's literally that simple. And if you want to add some flair, you can download a number of free editing apps. There's a lot out there. Personally, I use InShot because it's really easy and I have no patience. So here's a tip that I learned from Shay Rowbottom. Now, Shay, you've probably seen her on LinkedIn. She is one of the most well-known influencers, and she gives away a ton of advice on a daily basis. Tips on LinkedIn, but in particular, LinkedIn videos. And this was a tip that I learned recently from her, and I thought it was outstanding. She said, every day for 1 month, take out your phone and film a short video, 30 seconds to a minute, and it could be about anything. How your day is going, your job, a random thought, whatever. But the catch here is do so with no intention of ever posting it. There's no pressure. And I wish I had learned this tip before I got into the video game, because I can see just how valuable it can be. Filming videos on LinkedIn can be a humbling, embarrassing, and a very frustrating experience. I promise you. But by practicing, and we talked about this term earlier, by practicing, you get more comfortable over time. And when it's all said and done, if you try this tactic out of those 30 videos that you film, you may actually come out with a couple of really good ones that you want to post on LinkedIn. Just a couple of other random video tips to keep in mind. First of all, keep them as short as possible, 30 seconds to a minute. The first thing that people look at when they decide whether they're going to watch a video on LinkedIn, besides the author, is the length. And if they see a video that's 2, 3, 4 minutes, they're just going to keep scrolling. Keep it short. Number 2, captions will make or break your videos. I use a web service called rev.com. It's really self-explanatory. You simply upload the video after you shoot it. They do a phenomenal job of generating captions that are accurate, that then you can overlay on top of your video. And even with my Southern drawl, which is pretty extreme, they're like 99.9% accurate. I would encourage you to film in different locations, but start out where you have some privacy. There is a reason why so many people film LinkedIn videos in their car. And it's because it's so awkward when you start out. And I have done plenty for my truck. If you need to shoot their video in the car, that's fine. Go do it. It's your safe space. Just don't do it while you're driving. When you start your video, get right to the point. There's no need to start with an introduction of who you are, what your title is. We've seen that. We know who you are. Get right to the point quickly. And once you're comfortable and you've done a few videos, I do encourage you to use an app to polish and edit those videos. My personal favorite, as I mentioned a while ago, is called InShot. It's a free app with an upgrade. But while we are talking about other tools, I wanted to share 2 other resources that you really need to check out. One is the Teleprompter for Video app. And I just discovered this app about a month ago, and it's a lifesaver. You can type out your video script in advance. You can load it into the app, and it makes filming your videos so much easier. You don't have to worry about forgetting what you wanted to say. It saves you time, and it even keeps the script at the top of your camera lens, so you always have eye contact with the audience. It looks natural. The other resource that I highly suggest is a web service called Shield App. The URL is here. It's shieldapp.ai. So one of the great things about LinkedIn is the fact that they tell you how many people you reach on a post-by-post level. But they don't tell you the aggregate number of your statistics, and there's no way to export your post into an Excel file or even find a post that you wrote, say, a year ago. And this tool does that and much more. That's, I think, probably the feature that I enjoy the most. A lot of times I want to reference a post that I wrote 6 months ago, but there's no easy way to find that on LinkedIn. You can log into this tool, do a quick keyword search, and it'll take you right to the post, in addition to some other really, really cool features. It's affordable. I forget the pricing. I think it starts at maybe $15 a month. What's cool about that, though, is you can download it, you can pay for a month, and if you're cheap like me, you can export all of your posts to Excel, cancel your membership, and there's a quick workaround. Save a few dollars. Okay, so take a screenshot of this slide, please. Earlier, I mentioned that I was going to issue a challenge at the end of this. So here it is. When this webinar is over, I want you to go out and make a post on LinkedIn and just tell us 3 things about you, anything you like. It can be a text-only post like you see here, or if you want bonus points, make it a 30-second video. And when you do it, be sure and use the hashtag Anthony's Challenge and tag me in it. And if you do that, if you tag me in it, I'll follow up and send you a free Ducks Unlimited decal that you can put on your truck or your car. It will make you an even cooler person. All right, and wrapping up here, just a few final points. Remember, a LinkedIn page is not a brand. In order to create that brand, you've got to start posting content. Don't overthink it. Be in that 1%. As I also mentioned, be consistent and don't give up just because your first few posts don't perform like you hope they would. Don't be afraid to show your personality. That's what's going to make you stand out, because everyone else is scared to do it. Consider branding yourself or creating a hashtag that you can brand in all of your posts. excuse me, start using LinkedIn video. Start small, short, and over time, you'll get much more comfortable doing that. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that there would be a link to the tips and resources that I talked about today. If you scan this top QR code here with your phone, it will take you right to it. And you can scan the bottom one to connect with me on social media. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to say thanks again to the Memphis chapter of the American Marketing Association for having me. And thanks to all of you for joining us as well. If you enjoyed the session, if you learned anything from it, you can thank me by going to ducks.org and making an online gift to a great cause. And with that, Erin, I will wrap up, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I love it. Thank you so much. Very entertaining talk. I was watching people's faces and there were lots of smiles as you were going along. So great content and lots of great chat. So I'm just going to kind of roll back through some of the questions that have been popping up. One question, how much time do you estimate that you spend per week making content for LinkedIn?
Making content, it's hard to say like on a weekly basis, because as I mentioned, so much of my content is just an idea that I had a week ago. I jotted it down. I came back a week later and I made content out of it. On average, though, I probably spend a few hours a week just actually generating content.
Okay.
And when you first start out, it takes a lot of time. But as you do more and more, like I mentioned earlier, it comes more natural, and it's a lot more, it's a lot faster.
Right. And especially with the great tools that you have shared with everybody. Next question, how do you best train employees to use LinkedIn to build company brand without stepping on personal toes? That's a good question.
It's a great question. And honestly, it's something that we are still learning, right? So what I talked about earlier, the Ducks Unlimited digital hashtag, that was built specifically or created specifically just for my team with the idea to just start out and see how it works. Because honestly, I don't see a lot of companies that do that. So it's a learning process for us right now. Some employees are going to be more receptive to it than others. Some are more active on social media than others. So you really just have to give them the freedom to, post as much or as little as they want. Just kind of give them some sidebars in terms of the content that they should and should not be posting. And I know on my team, I've been very impressed with the content that they've put out over the last 8 months or so.
Yeah, I see the samples that you have put of your team, the digital team. Have you seen kind of any kind of trickle through with other team members at Ducks, or is it mostly your digital team?
We're starting with the digital team, although I have mentioned this to a few other leaders in the organization. I'm hopeful that others will follow suit and do the same. We'll see.
Yeah. So next one, what are the 2 to 3 best benefits of spending this time on your brand? And I think you can probably take that 2 ways, your personal brand, and then of course the impact to your company brand too.
Right. So, I mean, one thing I would say today more than ever, having a strong online brand is critical, right? We were all aware of the economic situation the world is in because of COVID, the job losses that have taken place. If you have already established a solid profile or identity on LinkedIn, that's going to serve you well in that job hunt. And kind of on a related note, it does not matter where you are in your career. It's never too early or too late to start building a brand. Like personally, I wish I had started posting content on LinkedIn right out of college. LinkedIn didn't exist back then. But for people who are just starting their career, if you start posting now on a regular basis, 10 years from now, and time flies, 10 years is fast. 10 years from now, you'll look back and you may be amazed at what opportunities open up because you've been posting. If you are somewhere in the middle of your career you've got some experience that you can share, knowledge and lessons that you can share that may lead to a promotion, may lead to an advancement or a shift in your career. And if you're in the latter stages of your career, you know more than everyone else, right? You've got all of the experience and the knowledge, and there's so many people out there that could gain from your insight, the lessons that you've learned. So I would encourage you, regardless of where you are in your career, building a brand is always relevant.
Great. Yeah, I completely agree as the brand manager for our organization. And there was a request about sharing the challenge slide again, and Mary has, she's shared the screen. So yeah, there that is. And then she's also put it in the chat if anybody wants to download it and save it. Well, this is a quick, simple question. So do you connect with everyone who requests to connect with you, or are you filtering incoming connection requests?
Yep, great question. So I think every connection is valuable, right? Again, when I first started, I had to know you before I would consider accepting. Then I kind of grew out and realized that as long as you don't look like a scammer, right off the bat, that you're not trying to hit me up with a Bitcoin scam. You've got 2 connections and you live in New Zealand or wherever. As long as your profile doesn't scream shady, then I'm open to connecting. And I will stay connected with anyone until someone gives me a reason not to, based on their content or whatever that may be.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. As long as they don't have on their profile picture, are you interested in a timeshare?
Yes. Those are great.
So good question here from Ashley. In the industry I work in, there's been a ton of posts lately on keeping LinkedIn professional content only. This has really swayed my teammates from not wanting to share anything personal. Any advice here? Yeah,
so I think it's important if there's a concern there, have that conversation with your manager, have the conversation with, human resources. Every organization should have a social media policy. We have one at Ducks Unlimited. I'm not going to share the full policy. I don't have it in front of me, but we encourage people to share content on social media, but do it responsibly. As I mentioned earlier, don't ever do anything or say anything that would be contrary to the values of your organization. But I would have that conversation with them and just say, hey, this is the type of content that I want to post. Once I think they see that it's not harmful to the company and that they're just trying to build their personal brand, if it's a positive influence, if it's a good place to work, I think most managers and leaders would be receptive to it. But a lot of people, they just have to get out of that mindset that LinkedIn is only for business, only for career-related content. And that's where, when I make these goofy challenges like this, I really want to see more people show their personal side on LinkedIn, because that's why I come back and look at the newsfeed. It's to learn, to see what other people are doing. The whole idea of people connect with people, that's universal.
Great, I love it. So we've got some questions about kind of logistics. So have you found, are there certain times of day that are best to post? Do you post just on the weekdays or also on the weekends?
Great question. So I post on any day, weekends included. Typically, most of my posts are during the week. As far as a time of the day, I've not done any like head-to-head scientific testing or anything like that. I've sort of noticed that posts perform better if you post in the morning during a work week. But what I've learned more than that is that it doesn't matter the day, it doesn't matter the time. It all centers on the quality of the content. If it's good content, the algorithm is going to pick it up. People are going to engage. And of course, the more people that engage, the more people LinkedIn is going to show that to organically. So don't focus on the time of the day, focus on the content.
Great. Let's see here. A couple more. So this one from Lindsay, are there any good ways to use Sales Navigator to build brands? I am not familiar with that one myself.
I know what Sales Navigator is. Me not being in the sales world, B2B,
Right.
B2C, I really don't have any experience on that. There's a lot of folks on LinkedIn that do, but yeah, I really have no experience there. Sorry.
Yeah, gotcha. How do you get access to LinkedIn Live? Is it worth the trouble?
So there's an application that you can download from LinkedIn. You just Google application for LinkedIn Live. I actually filled that out a few months ago and I was denied. So that was fun. And
They didn't like the dog pictures?
there's something they didn't like about, they didn't trust me going live for some reason. I will say, just kind of on a personal note, I'm not a big fan of LinkedIn Live because it's very rare that I'm going to be able to stop what I'm doing right now and listen to what someone has to say unless they are just, a phenomenal presenter, or I know in advance that this is coming. I see so many LinkedIn Lives pop up in my feed every day, and I completely really ignore them at this point. It just doesn't feel like it's really a natural part of LinkedIn, just a personal opinion.
Got it. Sorry, I muted myself for a second because I froze and I was like, oh, that's going to be weird. So just scaling back through, I think we've covered, and I apologize anyone if I've missed it. We've had lots of awesome comments and just enthusiastic participants in the chat. So sorry if I've missed that. There was a question kind of early on about connections versus followers. I think there's a way in there to change it from one to the other. Do you have any kind of opinions, thoughts on benefits or not of that?
Yeah, and that's something that honestly I still kind of get confused on myself. Anyone can follow anyone basically. If you want to be a little bit more guarded, you can have connections only and set who can contact you privately and that sort of thing. But I know that there's like a connection limit of like 30,000 or something like that. Once you hit that, from what I understand, all of your posts start to have a follow button added to it automatically to help your network grow.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really don't have any insight. If you want to connect with someone, connect. If you want to follow.
Sure. Got a request to explain tagging. So I think kind of a recap on what you were talking about, the benefits of tagging someone. I think logistics of it, you simply use the @ symbol and start typing their name and it should pop up. But kind of reviewing the benefits of that as well in the posts.
Right. So you're exactly right. Technically, all you have to do is type the @ button. And most of the time, if you're already in a conversation or in a thread with someone, you'll probably see their name pop up. Just start typing it. If not, they'll pop right up and hit enter or tab, and that will tag them. And as I mentioned earlier, the benefit of doing that is when you respond to that person or when you tag them in a post, it will then expose your content to their first and second degree connections that may not be connected with you at all, but it gives your content visibility and exposure to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And if those people see your content and they like it, that's when you're going to get more connection requests, more followers, and that sort of thing. So don't overuse it. Like I mentioned earlier, some people tag 80 people in a post, and they're just trying to, I guess, increase the visibility of their post. But do it strategically, do it smart, but it is a very effective function.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I think we've had some really great questions coming through. Any final questions that anybody wants to throw into the chat really quickly? I love that as we've been going along, no pie.
No pie. There was a pie chart. There was a pie chart.
Yeah. so a lot of people have been tossing their personal LinkedIn into the chat, which is awesome. I think you've inspired people to grow their network already. And then, yeah, I think that's great going back to that. So if anybody wants to take a quick scan of Anthony's tips, we've got the QR code there. And then, of course, if you haven't connected with him yet, I'm sure everybody will be doing that, or at least following him for all of his fun posts after this chat. So yeah, I see a lot of comments about great presentation, and thank you so much. And it was indeed a great presentation. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your insights. I think this has been a super fun and interactive discussion. So
well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. So I'll turn it back over to Patrick to close us out. And thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Aaron. Great job today. I'm not sure if there's anything else to say. We really appreciate it. I think the chat's going pretty good. We can kind of hang on if people want to keep on and connect to the chat. That's fine. But I think we can officially call the meeting adjourned, and we really appreciate it. Anthony, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. And yes, we'll have to send our poll out afterwards because I claim the host, but it's telling me that I'm logged in from another device. So my polling is inactive. So I don't know what's wrong with that. But we'll definitely, so everybody, as Patrick had said, please sign up for our newsletter to hear about more things, events, offerings coming from the group, and we'll send the survey out afterwards since my polling skills are apparently not great.
See y'all next month.
Yes, we'll see you next month. Again, that date, we're the first Thursday of every month, October 1st, and we'll have Steve Gavatorta talking about leadership in ambiguous times. So please join us for that one as well.
Hey, and be sure so you can keep up with us to follow us on all of our social channels.
Yes.
And we'll go ahead and sign everyone up for our emails. We won't blow you up or anything, but just to keep in contact. But yeah, definitely follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you for that ad, Hannah. Very good. Yes, please do. We're trying to really grow that social following as well. So great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Like Patrick said, we'll leave the chat open for a couple of minutes. But happy Thursday. Thank you, Anthony, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Go donate to Ducks Unlimited. They do great conservation work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're getting a lot of great thank yous in the chat, and it looks like our participants are dwindling, so everybody's moving on with their day. So we'll close it out. Thank you again, Anthony. That was awesome. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.